Welcome to the Empire's preseason podcast series. Today we will be covering the Temple men's basketball team and our prediction for their season. I am Benjamin Simon.
And I'm William Derry.
It has been 17 years since the Temple Owls escaped the first weekend of NCAA play. What used to be a commonality for Temple has been a struggle in recent seasons. But this year gives fans more hope than they've had in a while, especially after a disappointing season that was capped off by a 16-16 record and no postseason. The team returns steady point guard Josh Brown, the athletic shooting big in Obi Nechionia, and a plethora of other familiar faces. In addition, the Owls bring in a talented recruiting class that will push for minutes, giving Temple a roster that combines both experience and talent. Now, Will, when we're taking a look at this team, there are just so many pieces. And in your mind, do they have a go-to scorer like they've had in years past with Khalif Wyatt, Deontay Christmas, Will Cummings, or is this a team that might not have a go-to scorer?
Well, to start off, I think that with Josh Brown coming back this year, that is going to alleviate all the things that went wrong for Temple last year. Maybe not everything, but I think that with Brown returning this year, Obi Nechionia and Quentin Rose and Shiz Austin will be able to go back to their regular roles and be able to help the team out. Now, to start, going back to last season, with the first half of the season, maybe a little into conference play, Obi Nechionia was playing out of his mind. He was averaging 20 points. He was rebounding the ball really well. He was shooting from behind the arc really well. But then he started to slump maybe midway through the season. So I think when you asked about a go-to scorer, I think that person could be Obi. But, with Obi, it really comes down to him being consistent. We all know that Obi could possibly, be a late second-round pick in next year's draft, or maybe he'll sign with an NBA team or overseas team if he's not drafted. But Obi has the potential. This is his fourth year with Temple, and he has the ability to be the go-to scorer. I just don't know if he's as consistent as they need him to be that scorer.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, he was so good at the beginning of last year. Had 22 against West Virginia in the tournament that they played in, and had 16 against Florida State in the game before that. Shot above 50% in both those games. Actually shot 60% from the field against West Virginia and 70% from three. Was 5 of 7. And then after that weekend of tournaments on the Thanksgiving weekend, he had 26 points against St. Joe's, shot 45% from the field and 50% from three. I think people don't give Obi Nechionia enough credit when they're talking about the Temple Owls because they think of the slump that he went through midseason where he had streaks where he had back-to-back games with single digits against teams like Yale, UCF, and it just is unacceptable for your leading scorer to play a game, for example, where he scores 2 points. And I think people also forget about the Obi Nechionia at the beginning of the season, and that's still there. I don't know if, after just the way he kind of ended last season, if you can rely on him from day one to be a go-to scorer, but he might be someone that might evolve as a go-to scorer. I don't know if this is a Temple team that will have a go-to scorer, which would be interesting because we haven't seen many Temple teams that haven't had a go-to scorer. I mean, I talked about that at the beginning of the podcast, and we think about the teams that the Temple teams that haven't made the tournament. Last year's team, the team with Dalton Pepper a few years back, and Will Cummings. Will Cummings was a go-to scorer, but he wasn't the go-to scorer that maybe Khalif Wyatt was, or Deontay Christmas, even Marty Collins really back in the day. And they just had trouble without a go-to scorer. I wonder if this Temple offense is a team that needs a go-to scorer.
I don't think they do. With Obi, with Josh Brown, and also one person we haven't mentioned yet is Shiz Austin, who had a crazy year last year. I mean, talk about someone coming back after a lackluster, a quiet freshman season, and he exploded last year. Shiz had a year to remember. He was elected to the first team Big 5 team. He was also named the Big 5 most improved player. And, I mean, he led in so many categories in the American Athletic Conference. He led in free throw percentage. He was second in assist to turnover ratio. And I know you mentioned earlier about Obi being one of the leading scorers for the Owls. It was actually Shiz who led the team with 13.9 points per game last year. So, I know you mentioned guys previously. I know Coach Dunphy in the past has had guys like Khalif Wyatt, and like you were throwing it way back to Marty Collins. He's had guys who were the go-to scorer, but when you have players like Shiz Austin, like Josh Brown, like Obi Anexionia, like Quentin Rose, who we'll get to later in the podcast, I don't think you need someone scoring 20 points a night. If you have 4 guys scoring 12 to 15 points, I think that'll make up for not having a go-to guy.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be the hope. I just wonder, I think oftentimes what happens with this Temple offense is you get stagnant and a lot of ISO. And it's like when they have good ISO scores, they're often good because Temple just has trouble in their offense, I think, oftentimes taking good shots. And when they had those ISO scores, I think it created those open shots. And I think you had guys that could score in isolation. Those are the best Temple teams in recent years. With that being said, I think this team is more deep than they've had in recent years. I think that they have guys that maybe in years past would have been leading scorers. And I forgot to mention Quentin DeCozy as a guy who really led his team as an isolation scorer. And I think of kind of that team as this team, where you had a lot of guys like you had Devin Coleman, you had Quentin DeCozy, you had Josh Brown, guys that could put the ball in the basket, and you had Obi Anexionia when he was younger, guys that could put the ball in the basket and score. And then you also had a guy that was also your alpha dog in Quentin DeCozy, who you knew where the ball was going at the end of the shot clock, at the end of the game. You knew he was always going to be the toughest player on the floor. And I wonder if they're going to find a guy like Quentin DeCozy maybe, and you talk about Shiz Austin. Now, I don't know if he had as good of a season as maybe you're referencing. I think oftentimes, he had some really good games and some really good stretches, but consistency was another thing with him. Taking good shots was another thing with him. I think oftentimes he would just take bad shots, bad long mid-ranges, contested. So I wonder if this is going to be a team with a lot of scores like that Quentin DeCozy team had their senior year when they played Iowa. And they're going to have maybe an alpha dog that goes along with those really good scores that could heat up at any point.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Going back and talking about teams in the past who have succeeded under Coach Dunphy and being a ISO team and having a go-to guy, but I think it's something that we'll just have to wait and see. I think that early on you may see Shiz and well, maybe not Shiz. I think Shiz really. I know you mentioned that he didn't do as well as the stats may show, but I do think that he really took advantage of the opportunity with Josh Brown being out for a lot of time last year.
That's for sure. I mean, you can't deny that.
So I wouldn't be surprised if
1 point steals,
no,
1.7 steals. He had 1.7 steals per game, and I don't think that can be overlooked. And you can't deny the fact that Shiz is a competitor and a guy that wants to get better and wants to work, and that's why I see maybe him as. I agree with you, emerging maybe as the guy.
Yeah, we'll just have to see if he can continue what he did last year with Josh Brown being back now.
Yeah, I think losing a guy like they don't really lose a lot. I don't think. I mean, they lose Daniel Ding, who averaged 12.6 points per game. They lose Mark Williams, who averaged 6 points per game and had one of his better seasons. But those guys were ball stoppers. Dingle. Mark Williams, guys that the ball just kind of stuck in their hands when they got it, and you knew it really wasn't, probably wasn't going to leave their hands once they got it. I think that that's going to open up some more opportunities to get the ball moving, which I think is going to be very important. What I think that they're going to need is a guy. I think they're going to need a off-ball shooter. They got Shiz Austin, who I think will ultimately play off the ball, so I think he could fill that role. They got Obi Anexionia. I think they need someone off the bench that could help kind of spread the floor a little bit more. And I think that would really help. You look at some of the freshmen that might be able to do that. I think that would be a big step forward for the team.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say that any of the freshmen per se. I know they brought in one of the most talented freshman classes that they've had in a while. But as far as a knockdown shooter, I think that person may already be in the lineup with Quentin Rose. But, if we want to stay with the freshmen right now, well, you may not know about that. We may disagree. we can disagree. We can agree to disagree about Quentin Rose. We don't have to talk about Quentin Rose right now. Let's stick with the freshman right now and talk about this recruiting class. And like I mentioned before, one of the more talented freshman classes they've had in a while. And can I say one of the bigger freshman classes? I mean, even the guard they brought in, Nate Pierre-Louis, he's 6'4". DeAndre Perry is 6'6", 220. You have Justin Hamilton, who's hopefully down the line someone that Dunphy can throw into the lineup at 6'10", 190.
Needs to get bigger. Boy, 6'10", 190 needs to get bigger.
He needs to get bigger. He's pretty thin. And then to round out that group, it's J.P. Morman the second, who's 6'7", 205. I don't really see any of them as knockdown shooters. They're very athletic. They're a very athletic group who can, get the ball to the rim and hit shots. But knockdown shooter off the bench, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, maybe I should have phrased that better. I don't think that any of them are knockdown shooters per se. I think J.P. Morman is a good shooter, and he's someone that maybe could stretch the floor a little bit more than they're used to. In a ranking by 247 sports.com, ranking the top 10 freshmen in the AAC, 10th rankings were tied with J.P. Morman and Dre Perry. And in that, they mentioned the fact that Morman, ability to hit the one dribble jumper and catch and shoot threes, and that's honestly what they'll need. They won't need much more than that. I think what this freshman class brings more, and it's this the Temple way, is everything you read, everything that you watch, everything that you hear about this Temple class is that they're competitors, they're blue-collar players, and that they're hard workers and they're energy guys. You see that across every scouting report. Every notes about these guys are that they want to win and they compete. They compete to the very end.
Yeah, I watched some videos of Morman and Louis and Perry and also Justin Hamilton, and these guys bring it every game. They brought it. They attack the basket. They seem to not take any plays off. If we want to stick with Morman right now, he was named 2017 first team All-State. He's from Greensboro, North Carolina. And like you were saying before, him being a guy who can dribble and shoot off the dribble. One interesting thing I learned is that he ended up playing with Team CP3 on the EYBL circuit this past summer or the summer before. So he's definitely, he's played against great competition. He averaged 14.9 points and 7-point rebounds during his senior year. He helped Greensboro Day School win 2 state championships in 3 seasons. So he's a winner. And one thing I noticed, and this might have got lost, you might have mentioned it before, is that when he couldn't find a shot, he was able to find an open teammate. So he's a willing passer, which I think is pretty interesting and could be important for, if guys are playing him close, if he beats them or they're trying to double him or trying to fluster him being a freshman, he can find the open teammate for an open shot.
Yeah, J.P. Morman was considered one of the best players in his state, and it kind of I think took a little bit for him to get some offers, but really kind of racked up the offers from schools like Virginia Tech, VCU, Richmond, teams with good basketball histories right there. J.P. Morman, he's a guy that I think could play a lot of different positions. You talked about his ability to pass, his ability to handle the ball. He's a guy that might transition maybe in a point forward kind of guy, and that's what I've read across a couple different articles, seen some videos, and he's widely addressed as someone that's going to bring energy and effort at all times. And I think that's going to be really important because that's the Temple way. And when you get down to it, the good Temple teams all play hard. They all, were scrappy and didn't take no for an answer and didn't take losses lightly. I think that's what you might have missed last year was that competitiveness, and this freshman class definitely brings that competitiveness. Yeah,
they bring that competitiveness, and for Fran Dunphy and Temple to be successful, they have to be that gritty team that's going to fight for everything.
Yeah, and I just want to transition because we need to talk about him. Is Devon Perry? I think he's someone that could really play from the get-go. You look at he played at Baltimore's Polytech High School and was named actually Baltimore's Player of the Year. during the season, he averaged 19.9 points per game, 9.1 rebounds, 2.8 blocks, 4.5 assists. But in the state semifinal and final game, he averaged 28 points, 12.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 3 blocks. And I think that tells you a lot. Like, this guy's a big-time player at the highest level. He's a guy that had offers from Kansas State, Virginia Tech, USC, Dayton. And he wanted to come to Temple to work with Aaron McKee and Fran Dunphy, and really thought that Aaron McKee, would fit him well, and they kind of were similar skill sets, similar size. He's another guy that's just been touted as a hard worker, as someone that's been through adversity and that kind of stuff, and has really shined through it. Talking about his schoolwork, where he came in with 2.2 GPA to Baltimore's Polytech, and then finished with in his first quarter of his senior year had a 4.40. And I think that shows you where dedication even outside the basketball court. And we've talked about in other podcasts the importance of playing against good competition with Tadas Karinas of Drexel, and how he got minutes in his first scrimmage, second scrimmage. And he had played at Findlay Prep in Nevada, and how important that was, even though he didn't play much at Findlay Prep. Here's a guy that did play and played against schools like Simeon, Imhotep in Philly, Bishop Loughlin in New York, Mount St. Joseph in Maryland. He has that factor. I think that this recruiting class is one of the best that Fran Dunphy's had in his tenure at Temple.
Yeah, I agree. Perry, I think that performance that he had, I read that it was regarded as one of the most impressive individual performances in the state's tournament's history. So if that says anything about what he could possibly do at Temple, I think we're in store for something.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, with so many pieces, we're talking about the freshmen. We're talking about just they might not even have a go-to scorer in this year's team. Who are you looking at as the starting lineup? Who are you looking at as going to get consistent minutes for this team?
So right now, for my starting lineup, I have at the 1, Josh Brown. At shooting guard, Shiz Austin. At small forward, Quentin Rose. At power forward, Obi Aneksionya. And at the 5, Ernest Hamilton.
Yeah, that's what that's what I had too. I think Ernest will play over Damian Moore. I think Ernest he fits in better with the lineup, that is projected to play with him.
Yeah, I agree. I picked Ernest over Damian just because I think he has more experience. Ernest has been in the program a little longer, and I think Damian, not to take anything away from him, I think he'll also be a very important player off the bench because they're not too deep at the big man position. They have Ernest, they have Moore, and then Justin Hamilton is someone who we mentioned before still needs to put in a few more pounds, and he's more so someone that needs to use this year as a development year. So I think, like you said, Ernest at the 5 and Moore backing him up off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that maybe could happen is if putting Obi Aneksionya at the 5 with his athleticism and his size. I think he's a matchup nightmare for 5s too. And then kind of sliding in someone like, J.P. Morman or Devon Perry as bigger guys who can, substitute as the 4, play defense in the 4, and then provide matchup nightmares. And Quentin Rose in there too. That's a big lineup, even if your guy isn't, even if your starting 5 isn't necessarily a traditional big man.
Yeah, I think moving Obi to the 5 and everyone else up a slot, and then, like you said, either putting in Morman or Dre Perry, I think, like you said, it'll be a big lineup and a very athletic lineup. You have Obi, who a lot of us see him as a scorer and someone who, can attack the basket, but he averaged 1.5 blocks last year, so he's not going to be a slouch out there at the 5. So Coach Dunphy and his coaching staff, they're not going to lose anything taking out Ernest or not putting in Damian Moore and having Obi be their 5. So I could definitely see Dunphy and the Owls doing that quite often this year, having Obi play the 5 and moving everyone else up a spot in the lineup.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Quentin Rose fits in with the team. And I just wonder, I think that this is a team that more in that goes in hand with Quentin Rose. This is a team more in, you think back to the teams in recent years with Fran Dunphy, they were slow. They kind of controlled the pace of the game. They'd go to the end of the shot clock. They wouldn't really push the ball. I think this is a team that you might have to push the ball, especially when Obi's at the 5. You got guys like Quentin Rose and Devon Perry and J.P. Morman filling the lanes. You got guys like Shiz Austin kind of getting out of transition, be able to hit the 3. Also, you have a lot of guys that are able to handle the ball that aren't necessarily just the point guard. I mean, you're starting backcourt right now. If it's Shiz Austin, Josh Brown, Quentin Rose, all 3 of those guys can handle the ball. And then if you're playing Obi at the 5, let's just say you have maybe you want to go small. You got Alani Moore in there. Obviously, he can handle the ball. J.P. Morman and Devon Perry can put the ball on the floor if needed. Not so much Morman, but definitely Perry.
Yeah,
Actually,
Temple has the
capability. Other way around. Definitely Morman.
So definitely Morman and not Perry.
Well, I think Perry can. I just don't know if that's something we're going to see right off the bat.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned them having, I think the word you're looking for is versatility.
Yes, yeah. I think they have a lot of versatility.
Yeah, I think the versatility they have with, moving Obi to the 5 and then either moving Perry and Morman into the lineup, that gives them 5 ball handlers. Maybe Perry, not, someone you want to run the point guard, but he's someone who can definitely, beat his man off the ball. So, I agree. I agree that they have a lineup that, is interchangeable. They're able to switch on a lot of sets and should be able to, not rely on just one person always bringing the ball up the court.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think there'd be a lot of guys. Like I said, I think all 4 of the freshmen. I think outside of Justin Hamilton, I think the other 3, Pierre-Louis, Perry, and Morman, can bring the ball up in transition. And I think this is a team that I think by the end of the season you might see guys like Damian Moore and Aflakpi be more situational guys and not necessarily starters and consistent minute guys.
Yeah, especially when you get down to, the conference play, when they get into the heart of their schedule, I could definitely see Coach Dunphy, limiting the minutes of his big men and going with a more offensive lineup and a more athletic lineup. Yeah,
and he mentioned the schedule. Let's talk a little about the schedule and how this team's going to match up with the schedule because it's a tough schedule. It's not going to be easy, especially considering, how much better the American's getting.
Yeah, if you want to, I'll make a quick point about the American, and I just want to say that Wichita State joined the conference this year, so that's a big deal. Wichita State, if you're unfamiliar with their story, that's the program that Shaka Smart built up before leaving for the University of Texas, and they have been a legit NCAA tournament team for the past 4 to 5 years, I'll say.
Yeah, maybe even longer.
So, maybe even longer. I mean, I don't know how long Ron Baker played there for, but for as long as he played there, they were NCAA tournament team. So
he's there for a while.
Yeah, he was there for a long time,
15 years.
I'm not sure if it was Ron Baker or Perry Ellis. I'm not sure who spent more time in college, but they were there for a long time.
Perry Ellis was there. His hairline started receding.
Perry Ellis seemed like he was at Kansas for a really long time. But
really long time.
back to the tough schedule that Temple has upcoming this year. They start off the year with the Charleston Classic from November 16th through the 19th. That'll take place in Charleston, South Carolina. And the first game is they're going to be going up against Old Dominion. That should be a good game to see where they are. And then they either play Auburn or Indiana State based off of that. And then even before the Under Armour reunion where they play South Carolina and New York City on ESPN3 at Madison Square Garden, they play a city rival in LaSalle. They go to LaSalle in between the Charleston Classic and the Under Armour reunion, and that's on November 26th where they play LaSalle. And then they have a one-game classic, the BB&T Classic on December 3rd, where they play George Washington in Washington, D.C., and this is all before a 5-game stretch that I'll let you take over.
Yeah, I think that I think that first couple games, obviously they're going to play against South Carolina in Madison Square Garden. South Carolina made it to the Final Four last year. Obviously they lost some of their major parts in Derry, Stornwell, but obviously a good opportunity for them to play against SEC competition to start the year. Charleston Classic, I just want to add really quick. They also have the opportunity to play in a championship, which could feature teams like Clemson, Dayton, Hofstra, teams with good basketball history in recent years. And I wonder, if this was a good tournament to put them in, they kind of start off with maybe some teams that will be expected for them to beat, and then could possibly play a tournament resume helper in the championship game, and Dayton team that's really good history. Clemson, and then so after playing George Washington, who just had that disappointing loss last year in that buzzer beater, they'll play against Wisconsin. Wisconsin this time coming to Liacouras Center Wednesday night. Then they'll go play. They'll have a home stretch. So after kind of playing on the road for most of the beginning of the season, they're going to go Wisconsin, St. Joe's, Villanova, Drexel, and then rounding out their non-conference schedule. For the beginning stretch of the season, will be at Georgia, in Athens, Georgia. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty tough stretch. The St. Joe's team's going to be good. Obviously, bringing back Shavar Newkirk, who averaged 20 points per game last year. Lamar Kimball, a fantastic backcourt, will definitely be a good test for them. Wisconsin team that's always good. Villanova, I mean, I don't even need to explain. Every time they play Villanova, it's going to be a tall order, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they match up with a Villanova team without a traditional big that they've had in recent years with Daniel Chefu and Darryl Reynolds. We'll see they have some younger guys, some younger big men, but they might also be going small. Be interesting to see how Temple match up with them there. And then Drexel, a game that they should win. And then they play at Georgia, which might be an interesting matchup. Georgia's always a pretty good team, always on the bubble. And then the American Conference. I mean, American Conference is a good conference. Cincinnati is a consistent tournament team. Houston's always on the bubble. SMU's a team that's been really, really good in years past. The top 25 team on a consistent basis. And now they're adding Wichita State, who's ranked in the top 10. Plenty of opportunities for either Temple to prove themselves as a top-tier team or for things to go south really quickly.
Yeah, there's no in-between with with Temple this year. They are either going to do really well or they're going to struggle early. And they can't hide this season. It looks like their entire non-conference schedule, besides maybe the Drexel game and maybe the Old Dominion game, they're going to be facing teams that most likely will be playing in March. So they're not going to have an easy task this year. And then after they get past their non-conference schedule, then they have to go into conference play where, like you said, they're playing against teams like SMU and Cincinnati and now Wichita State. So they have their hands full this year with a tough schedule. But, we'll find out, what they're made of.
Yeah, and you can't sleep on the UFC nights. UCF nights. I'm sorry, not USC, not USF. UCF. I think that's a team that's really gonna surprise people as a contender in the AAC. They return redshirt junior guard B.J. Taylor, who was really good the past couple years, and obviously Taco Fall. I mean, everyone knows Taco Fall, 7'6". That's a team that's given Temple a lot of trouble in the past, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond this year. I think what will be interesting to see is just what improvements are made from last year to this year. What improvements do you see that are going to need to be made, and how do you think they could execute that well to make sure that they play up to the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first improvement is going to be a more cohesive group. This year it was just announced, I think last week or the week prior, that seniors Josh Brown and Obi Anachioni are going to be the team's captains. So I think it starts with them to try to Yeah, Obi and Josh Brown are this year's captains for the Temple Owls, and they both have experience in the program. They both have been around long enough to know what it takes to make the tournament and to do well in this conference. As far as improvements, I think it has to go back to what you said earlier on about ball movement. Last year I felt like at times with Temple, if it was Daniel Diggle or Mark Williams and sometimes Shiz Austin, the ball would, it wouldn't move. They would just, play ISO ball. And I feel like with Temple, if they're going to be at their best, they need to be moving the ball, running half-court sets, and, getting out on the break and finishing in transition. So that's one improvement that I think that the Owls will make this year, especially since they have their guy, Josh Brown, back. And Josh Brown is another key for the second point that I want to make is team defense. Last year they allowed 71.2 points per game, and with the schedule they have this year, they have to play team defense. You can't just, hope to outscore teams. They're playing against tournament level teams, so team defense is going to be key. And, last year they struggled because they didn't have their guy. They didn't have Josh Brown, who missed last year because of the torn Achilles, and he tried to play. He only was able to, feature in 6 games before calling it a season and thankfully being granted a medical red shirt. So I think for the second point is team defense and Josh Brown leading them. And, with Josh Brown in the front, there has to be someone in the back in the center protecting the rim, and that's Ernest. Ernest has to step up this year. The stats with Ernest are, Ernest is never going to be someone that's going to fill out the stat sheet, but he did, average 5 rebounds. He had about 4.3 points last year. With him, you look forward to, rim protection, maybe putbacks on the offensive end, but his main role in this team is to play defense and to stay out of foul trouble so that, he can be in for, 20-plus minutes for these guys. And then the third improvement, I think it has to be Obi. Obi has to do what he did at the beginning of last season, but he has to be able to keep it up all season long. He can't have a great non-conference schedule or a great, maybe the first 2 tournaments they play in or the first 2 the first 2 classics they play in this season. If he does well then, he has to do it for the entire season. He can't just, pick and choose which games he's going to go off. He has to be consistent. I think that's the word that sums up, the 3 points is be consistent on moving the ball on offense, be consistent playing team defense, and if Obi can stay consistent, now Temple, they're in store for something this year.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting with Obi and Echionia is that when's the last Temple go-to scorer that's been a big man in the Fran Dunphy era? Because I can't really think of one. You think of a guy like Lavoy Allen.
Lavoy
Allen wasn't a go-to scorer. He was more like he could put the ball in the basket, but they weren't going to him every possession.
Yeah, Lavoy never really demanded the ball.
No, and that's not Lavoy's game. Lavoy was a fantastic defender, and he would finish when he had to. And obviously he scored more in like Ernest or, some guys in the past like Anthony Lee. But he wasn't a go-to. I didn't view him as a go-to scorer.
No, neither did I. With Lavoy, what he really liked to do was, not to cut you off, what he liked to do was he liked to pull up for the 18-footers right inside the arc, and, that was his great shot. Or he would like to do a pick and roll with the guard and roll to the basket. So, yeah, Temple hasn't had a dominant big man in a while. Yeah,
and I think it's going to be interesting to see how the offense plays with a dominant big man. Is this going to be really good for the team? Could we get this, kind of play of a 2-man game with Josh Brown and Obi and Echionia that Temple fans have never seen before in the Fran Dunphy era that might be ingenious? Or is this offense not really built for a go-to big man? Last year they played really well when Obi played well, and I'd like to think that if they get guard play to step up with Obi, they could beat teams like they beat last year with West Virginia and Florida State. I think that could be really important in a dimension that Temple's never had in the era of Fran Dunphy. And I think that having Obi and Echionia be consistent all of the time, along with the scoring guards that they have and the smart guards that they have, I think could make a really hard to guard pick and roll, I think can make Temple really hard to guard. And I think when you get out in transition, and you got, Shiz Austin on one side, you got Obi Netionia on the other side, and you got Quentin Rose filling the lane, where do you stop ball? And then you got Josh Brown bringing the ball up. You got two shooters on the outside. You got Quentin Rose filling the lane, and you got Josh Ball with the ball in his hands and one of the best ball handlers in the NCAA. That's a really hard offense to stop, and I'd like to see Temple be more up-tempo than they have in the past, and I think that's going to start with making sure Obi is consistent from day one.
Yeah, they're ranked 31st for best offense by Sports Illustrated and are 32nd according to the 2017-18 ESPN Basketball Power Index rankings. So they're up there. They're ranked high for offense, and it's just, like you said, consistency.
Yeah, and you look, they took the most three-point attempts in the AAC last year with 474, but only shot 34%. That's always been a kind of problem with Temple, is just a lot of threes and not always going in. High percentage shots really has to be a key for Temple. I can't stress that enough because it's just really, I feel like, where they've struggled in the past is shot selection.
Yeah, I know you mentioned earlier when I, mentioned Shiz Austin's name, and I think he's one of the main people that, took shots that were probably ill-advised at times. He had the chance to do it because of, Josh Brown not being there and Shiz Austin having more chances. But, shot selection is key, and, I think for them, sometimes they wait too long in the shot clock to attempt a shot. It seems like they just need to play quicker and to, like you said, better shot selection and score in transition. This is not an unathletic team, especially if they move Obi to the 5. This can be a team that can do great in transition and, outrun some of their competitors.
Yeah, and you look back to the last team that did really well. They did have actually, and a couple 2 years ago with Quentin DeCozy, Obi Netionia, Devin Coleman, Jalen Bond, who we forgot. Jalen Bond was a guy that could put the ball in the basket. Now, he was on and off, and I wasn't always a huge fan of his game, but he was definitely a big man. And him and Obi Netionia combined, they were two of the three leading scorers, two of the three people in double digits for the Owls. And you could see the effect of having two good scoring big men right there. Made the NCAA tournament. Should have won against Iowa. And we haven't mentioned this, but just getting back to their defensive days, and that's where the Fran Dunphy teams were the best. Given they gave up only 67.6 points per game, 70th in the country, and they only turned the ball over twice. They definitely turned the ball over more than twice. They only turned the ball over 305 times, which was second in the nation. And you see those two things go hand in hand with Temple basketball. Now I wonder if you're going to have more turnovers if they decide to play more up-tempo and this kind of offense that could kind of be better offensively. But definitely getting back to the defensive days is going to be huge. And I think that's going to be really important for their success as a team. Holding teams to shoot 31% from three, which they did back in 2015-16 season when they played Iowa in the first round. Defense has got to be first priority. And I think that if they can get the defense to come together with the offensive firepower that they should have, this is a very dangerous Temple team that I think actually could make it to the second week of NCAA tournament play.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with your point about them being better when the defense is something that they focus on. And the years from, I think, the 07-08 season to the 012 to the 12-13 season, they made the tournament every year, and they were able to hold their opponents to under 70 points. So it's happened before. This is something that Fran Dunphy has done in the past, and hopefully something that they can do this season.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, like I just said earlier, I'm really interested to see just how this team can, if Obi does turn out to be the go-to scorer, just how much that's going to actually help the team win games. I'm interested to see how much it's going to elevate the play of having a go-to scorer that's a big man. And then with the really good guard play that they have, I think it'd be a really cool addition to the Temple game that we haven't seen in past couple seasons. But I think that about wraps us up. Did you have anything else to add, Will?
Well, before we wrap up, we forgot the prediction. What do you think they're going to do this year?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that this Temple team will make the NCAA tournament. I don't know how far. I think if things come together, I think this could be a really dangerous Temple team. But I think that they will make the tournament. I think this team will figure it out. And I don't think Josh Brown's going out as last year without finding his way back to the tournament.
Yeah, of course, Brown's going to be motivated, and so is Obi. This is Obi's last season. Both captains, both seniors, they're all in this year. I can definitely see them making the tournament. I don't think it's a sure thing. I think it's going to be the day of. We're going to have to probably watch the show to see if they get in or not. They'll probably be on TV. I think it's going to be one of those years where they're going to have cameras on the Temple locker room, and it's going to be the day of to find out if they make it in or not. But they are definitely there. They just have to, be consistent, play team defense, and try to score in transition. And, if they can, like we have been stressing, if they can hold teams to under 70 points or, 70 points or less, they should be able to return back to the tournament.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. I'm obviously always more on the optimistic side than you are. And I'd like to think that this team's going to come together. I think it's about time that a Temple team really clicks and can get past that first weekend.
Yeah, I think this is the year for it to happen.
Yeah. But thank you for listening to the Empire's edition of Temple Season Preview. We'll be coming out with podcasts for each of the 6 teams to document just maybe a different medium about our expectations for the teams. We'll also be releasing written reports to come out with the podcast. Sometimes having different authors than us. Sometimes we write the stories, so you could see some different opinions, some different ideas. A lot of content for you to consume. So make sure to check that out. Links will be in the description. But thank you, and we look forward to listening into our next show. I'm Benjamin Simon.
And I'm William Derry.
Thank you very much.